Light a campfire and everyone's a storyteller. Join us for some thought-provoking and beyond fireside chats.
Hello and welcome to Leave Our World a Better Place. My name is Kasia and today I'm joined by adventure dive expert Walter Bernardis from African Watersports, who will talk about diving the world's largest migration of fish, South Africa's annual Sardine Run. Walter is gearing up to lead the Oceans Without Borders marine migration expedition, part of and Beyond's limited edition itineraries, launched to celebrate the company's 30-year anniversary. Walter, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us today to talk about the Sardine Run in general and about and Beyond's Oceans Without Borders Sardine Run small group journey in particular, which you will be hosting for us.
Correct.
To start off with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you came into the world of diving and sort of marine ecology, and how you came to be hosting our Sardine Run itinerary with and Beyond?
A bit about my background. I'm a mechanical engineer and a high school teacher. I've been teaching for the past 30 years and the last 10 years as a deputy principal at a technical high school. I started my scuba diving career sort of 1982. Mm-hmm. That's when the whole interest in the underwater world really got me, and was always interested in sharks. And the Sardine Run is one of those events that obviously attract a lot of predators, and some of those predators are sharks. So I naturally was very interested in that and basically pioneered the Sardine Run with a good friend of mine, Mark Addison. And we started that in the late 80s or early 90s and have been doing it ever since. The And Beyond small group Sardine Run experience, I was introduced to Kevin by a friend of mine, Peter Lamberti, who has been on the Sardine Run quite a few times and has filmed some really epic stuff. And together they asked if I would host the And Beyond group. And, I've always been interested in getting involved with And Beyond. This is the first year that we're going to actually be taking you guys out there and showing you what we've got to offer there.
Fantastic. I know our team is very much looking forward to it. Now, most of our listeners, and actually anybody who's really interested in diving or in the marine world, will be quite familiar with the Sardine Run. But for those who are not quite clear on the concept or who haven't heard about it before, can you just talk a little bit about what this marine phenomenon actually is and how it works?
Starting in about February, March, the sardines start aggregating in the Gullis banks. And towards the end of May, they start moving up the coastline. A lot of the movement coincides with the inshore colder current that happens on our coastline coming up our east coast. But, I've seen them come up with the cold water. I've seen them come up with the warm water. And joining these sardines are a host of other bait fish. It's a smorgasbord of food moving up the coastline. You get different kinds of sardines. You've got mackerel, you've got suri, you've got shad, you've got carantine. You've got a lot of different stuff that's coming up the coastline. And obviously that attracts a lot of predators. And it's one of the only places in the world where you can go and dive and watch natural predation like you do on the Discovery Channel. Nobody actually knows why these sardines move or why these other bait fish move. There's a lot of theories out there, but none of them are actually proven. There are some theories that they're coming up here to spawn, and the fish that are spawned up in the Natal waters will always return to where they were spawned, very much like the salmon do up the rivers in Canada and those places. But we get sardine eggs down in Cape Town, we get sardine eggs up here. So, like I say, there are a lot of theories, but nobody really knows why. We're just thankful that they do, and they put on the show that they do every year.
So, when you talk about sardines, it's I think it's a little bit hard for somebody to imagine. Just to put it in context, what are the kind of numbers of sardines that you're talking about?
Sure. No, they must range in their millions. From the air, they are clearly visible. It's like a black stain of oil sort of in the water. And these can be kilometers long. So you can imagine how many sardines are in a shoal that's 500 meters wide, a kilometer long, and about 3 to 6 meters deep. So it's millions and millions and millions. And that's just the one kind of sardine. Then you've got red eyes, you've got big eye eastern sardines, and all the other bait fish that are moving with them at the same time. The actual sardine itself is not a big fish. It's only about 6 inches long and about 20 millimeters wide. And they make up this huge mass of fish coming up the coastline.
It's really an extraordinary sight. And so you've spoken a little bit about the sardines and the bait fish that actually make up the mass that's moving. What are some of the other marine species that are attracted by this movement, especially the predators?
Well, the Sardine Run, because of the sheer numbers of the sardines and other bait fish, it attracts a lot of predators. You can get the bride's whale, which will feed on the sardines. You've got dolphins, common dolphins, bottlenose dolphins, pan-Pacific tropical dolphins. They range in their thousands. And, as far as the eye can see, you'll just see dolphins charging. And all those predators are there because their food source is there. So that's a good indication that you're in the right place at the right time. Along with that, you've got a lot of different sharks coming into the area, mainly duskies, bronze whalers, bull sharks. You've got ragged-tooth sharks. You've got a lot of sharks that are actually coming into this area as well just to feed on that smorgasbord that's moving down the coastline. And they just move with the sardines. Birds, got a host of different birds, mainly the Cape gannet that feeds on the sardines. The Sardine Run also coincides with the longest migration in the world of the humpback whales. In a day, you could maybe see 10 or more humpback whales all swimming up the coastline on their way up to the Seychelles and those areas where they spend the winter months and then back down to the Antarctic, which is one of the longest migrations in the world. I've never seen them feeding on the sardines. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So there are those that say they have seen it. My pilot says he's seen the humpback whales in the sardine bait balls. Maybe there is a snack on the way for them as well.
And, in terms of the significance of the Sardine Run to the marine ecosystem along the coastline, is food really the main function, or is there another sort of purpose that the Sardine Run fulfills, or is it actually a little bit of a mystery?
It's the whole Sardine Run, why they move, and everything behind the Sardine Run is a mystery. But I know that it does provide a huge source of food for all the, even the pelagic fish that we have down there. We have sailfish, salmon, shoals of salmon. We've got bonito that feed on them as well. And then you've got the bigger predators, your sharks, your dolphins, and the bride's whale. We also get the southern right whale. So you could see 4 different types or 5 different types of whales. You could see maybe 5 different types of sharks. You will see a host of different bird life, from storm petrels, albatross, Cape gannets, and a lot of different seagulls. There is a huge variety. That whole thing makes up the Sardine Run, and that's what attracts so many people, and they're so high on everyone's bucket list. I've dived all over the world. I've dived with great whites out the cage. I've dived with tiger sharks and all the sharks here on the Ellerville Shoal. I've dived with Nile crocodiles in the Okavango, and nothing compares to the Sardine Run in terms of the adrenaline rush you get. And, sometimes you actually, you've got to be careful what you wish for, because it just might happen, And I've been in that situation with the Sardine Run on several occasions where you're looking in the water and what's going on there with a sheer number of predators involved makes you think, did you really want to get in the water? Luckily, I have every time, and it's been extremely rewarding and the best time of my life, actually.
Absolutely, I can only imagine. Like any sort of natural migration, obviously the Sardine Run varies from year to year in terms of the numbers of fish and In some years, I'm sure you'll have much lower numbers and not so much of the movement happening. And in other years, it's much stronger. Can you speculate about what might be some of the reasons for this and whether there are any man-made threats that the sardines face while they're migrating? Is this marine resource being protected in any way, or is anything being done to sort of look after it and foster it?
So when the sardines actually aggregated on the Agulhas banks, there was a movement up the west coast and a movement up the east coast. On the west coast, they had sardine trawlers that went out and netted the actual sardines, and they depleted that shoal to extinction. Whereas up our east coast, there was no netting at that point. So when they saw that the west coast shoal was depleted, they turned their eyes now to the east coast. And for a long time, nothing actually happened. And at Mossel Bay and Port Elizabeth, they got some trawlers in and they started netting the sardines. So now it's a full-on commercial operation netting our sardines that come up the east coast. And initially they were transporting those sardines back to Namibia to have them processed, and have now moved the whole factory, canning factory and the rest of it, to the Mossel Bay area where they process the fish. It's sad in a way that most of the fish that is caught is turned into pellets, which is then sent to Canada and other places where they have these fish farms, and those fish are fed on those pellets. And they say to us, got to eat our salmon because they are environmentally
farm bred.
Meanwhile, they're depleting our resources to feed those salmon, and
that it's sustainable.
So you can imagine each trawler net that gets taken every night, which is tons and tons and tons of sardines, is one less big bait ball that comes up the coastline. And this goes on every single day, except, I believe, on a full moon where they, for some reason, don't get any of the fish. They can't net them. They stay deep, or I'm not sure what the story is.
Yes.
To answer your question, that's what's depleting what's coming up the coastline and what's making it very difficult in some years when the shoals aren't that big. For instance, last year during COVID, I'm not sure if there was an impact on the trawling as well. I'm sure there was initially. And the shoals that came up last year were phenomenal. We've never seen so many sardines. This year, again, everything seems to be indicating that it will be early. Like I said, we've seen shoals off Brazen Head last week. A lot of activity at East London, Morgan's Bay. Big cold front hitting us this weekend as well, which spurs the movement of the sardines for some reason. After each cold front, there's a spurt of sardines coming up the coastline and the action that comes with it. Fingers crossed that it's another good year this year.
Hopefully so. We've spoken a little bit about the sardines themselves.
Yeah.
Are there any threats to the species that are attracted to them as a food source? For example, the shark nets that are used in large parts of KwaZulu-Natal. How much effect do these have, or are they removed during the Sardine Run, or what steps are taken to actually prevent losses there?
What's happened over the years, they try to leave the shark nets in, which are basically gill nets, during the Sardine Run. But the sheer mass of sharks and rays and dolphins and all the other species that they caught in these gill nets was such a huge volume that they couldn't cope with it. And they were forced to remove the nets so as not to cause a huge outcry. Nobody cries about the sharks being caught, but it's normally it's the dolphins and the whales and the rays that cause the outcry. Unfortunately, it should be just as big an outcry when a shark is caught there. So they do remove the nets. They have a big impact on our daily life with the predators that they catch in the shark nets. On the Adderall Shoal, which is a marine protected area, they don't have a big impact on the predators moving up with the sardines because of the fact that they actually remove them during the months of June and July.
Yeah, so it's actually a much lesser impact that time of year, whereas, actually shark numbers, I think, are dwindling along our coastline in general throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We started the tiger shark diving business here in the early 90s. And we used to see numbers up to 15 tigers in one dive. And today, if you see one, you're lucky.
I can imagine. Okay, we've spoken a little bit about diving the Sardine Run itself and, what makes it so spectacular. You've spoken a little bit about so many species that you can see while you're diving. Can you sort of talk in more detail about what marine and bird species can guests expect to see when they go out on the water with you?
Whale-wise, we can see humpback whales. You'll see Bruder's or Bride's whale. You'll see pilot whales. You'll see southern right whales. It's quite a variety of whales for those that love the whales. I mean, it's an amazing sight on its own. As far as the sharks go, you've got a lot of different kinds of sharks. Although not all the sharks participate in the feeding on the bait ball. You've got more the duskies, the black tips, the bronze whalers, your bull sharks or Zambezi as we call them here, and your raggies that feed on the sardines. Your great whites, tigers, makos, blue sharks, that kind of thing you don't see on the bait balls for whatever reason. They hunt maybe bigger species of food, On the bird side, you will see a lot of different kinds of albatross. You'll see different kinds of storm petrels. You'll see the Cape gannet, which is the main kind of bird that hunts the actual sardine. And then you'll get your pelagic fish that are following this food source as it comes up the coastline. You get huge shoals of salmon. You get sailfish. You get marlin. You get bonito, all feeding on those sardines. So it's quite a wide variety on the Sardine Run.
Those Cape gannets are actually quite fascinating. I've seen the footage of them, diving into the water to try and get some of the fish. Is that something that you actually can see when you're underwater?
Oh, yes. When they hit the water, you don't actually hear the splash underwater. It feels like you're standing next to, I don't know if you stood next to like an anti-aircraft gun. You feel the shock going through your body, like boom, boom, boom. You just feel these vibrations, and you can imagine it's like you're just hoping you don't get one planted in your head. These guys are coming down at, I'm not sure what speed they're hitting the water, but just watching the various stages of their dive topside is amazing. They'll fold their wings, they'll aim, and then they'll come down, they'll trim their wings in a bit more like a F-16, and then finally at the very last second, they'll trim their wings right back and hit the water. Now, that initial dive can take them down to about 10 meters. But I've been at easily 20 meters and had that bird swim past me. It actually like flies underwater, swim past me, chasing those sardines into the depths. They are amazing divers, amazing flyers, and an absolute pleasure just to watch them on their own, never mind any of the other things that are going on around you.
Yeah, that must be absolutely surreal to see.
It is an amazing sight.
In terms of how the timing and everything works, obviously the Sardine Run, it's a natural movement, so you can't control that. And also, it's not one steady movement of sardines all of the time. There are different shoals that come through one after another, or sometimes with breaks in between. So getting the timing for an expedition like this must be really tricky. What are some of the steps that you take to follow the movements of the shoals and try and ensure that your guests have the best possible chance of seeing them and experiencing this?
Yeah, that is a difficult one because you've only got that many slots in June and July. So we work in 7-day slots. You pretty much got to pick your slot and hope you don't get a dead period where there's nothing happening. It's seldom that happens. Otherwise, the Sardine Run would have died a horrible death a long time ago. You can't have people coming here week after week and not getting a result and then coming back. Most of my business is return business. And it's not only the sardines that have this natural predation. You have the mackerel that form big bait balls as well. You've got red eye that forms a bait ball. You've got all the other bait fish that the predators are hunting as well. They hunt them in a different fashion. From the top side, You can see the way the birds are behaving, the way the dolphins are behaving, and you can guess what the type of prey they're feeding on. Is it mackerel? Is it suri? Is it red eye? In that way, we can get our clients to get in the water with those bait balls as well, and are just as satisfying as watching the sardine bait ball. But when it comes to being specific about the time that you're there, and that is extremely difficult. We just try and maximize our chances by having a spotter plane. We've got a microlight with a very experienced pilot that can spot a pin at 1,000 meters. I reckon his eyes are unbelievable. And a very experienced crew on the boat that knows what they're looking for. And the combination of the two hedges our bets to get the best result. Otherwise, if there's no sardines, there's no sardines. There's nothing you can do about it.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's the natural world.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit about a typical day for a guest on one of the Sardine Run trips, because I do imagine that, especially the part of being out on the water, it's quite a bit different from your average sort of dive trip and probably quite a lot less structured.
Right. So the typical day would start with breakfast at 6 o'clock, down to your rooms at 6:30, get into your wetsuits, collect your camera gear, and head down to the beach, which is a short walk, and get ready to go out on the boat. Before you go on the boat, the skipper will give you a detailed briefing about the launch, because they surf launches and they can be quite exciting on their own. And then the dive master will also give you a briefing on the various types of diving that you will be doing, whether you're jumping in with whales or dolphins or jumping in on a bait ball, and the various kinds of bait balls that we're going to encounter and how we're going to approach those. So you'll get a detailed briefing on the first day about all that, and then just a quick brush of the different points, or if somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing, we'll tell them in a nice way what they should be doing and why they should be doing it. That's usually for their own life preservation. Then it's out to sea. We're in contact with the microlight. The microlight will tell us where the best action is at the moment, whether it's whales, whether it's dolphins, whether it's birds in a bait ball. Because normally the Cape gannets are the one that give the bait ball away. Not always, but 9 times out of 10. Then we'll head out. Our boats have got 200 liters of fuel, so they've got quite a big range that they can cover. We spend about 5 hours of the day chasing whales, dolphins, sardines, and whatever else might occur. The typical bait ball is get a message on the radio saying that there's a bait ball at a certain location. We use codes as well, because a lot of people have got scanners. They don't have microlights, and they're listening desperately to a microlight to hear where we're going, what we're doing. And we head in that direction. Then we'll see the birds. That's the first sign you'll see. And it's almost like a tornado that's inverted. A tornado sucks up. This is a tornado that sucks down, and it's just birds raining out the sky. I mean, thousands of birds. And they're all hitting one spot, and it's like a bullseye, but a white bullseye from the water being atomized as that bird hits the water. And then they'll go down, they'll feed on the sardines, and then they'll come up away from that bullseye. Obviously, if they come straight back up there, they're going to get hit by the next bird coming down, and then come up away from the bullseye and circulate back up in the air, and then repeat the whole process till they can't fly anymore. They get so heavy with sardines that they actually cannot take off. They've got to sit there and digest a lot. We arrive, assess the situation, get everybody kitted up, jump in the water, and go down and just watch the spectacle unfold, like being a predator, except that you're a passive sort of predator, and you're just watching what's going on. The dolphins, they coordinate their whole attack, and you can see by the action of the sardines that the next attack is coming. Then you'll hear the squeak of the dolphins, and this comes shooting through the sardines. And next thing, you'll see this dark thing materialize next to you. It looks like a submarine, and this opens its mouth, and half the shoal of the sardines are gone. And the sharks getting involved. there can be massive sharks. Those duskies really grow big and are quite intimidating to see underwater. But they're not interested in us. They're just interested in the sardines, Very important when you're diving with apex predators, you don't want to look like food, number one, and you don't want to act like food, number two.
Yeah.
So our equipment must be as plain as possible. No whites, silvers, flashy colors. I see people arrive with silver fins, and now those sharks are eating silver fish. And I asked them, well, what do you think is going to happen?
Makes no sense.
Normally, like a 5 millimeter wetsuit with a hoodie is good enough because the average water temperature is 21 degrees Celsius. But a good beanie and a splash-proof jacket to keep the wind off you while you're traveling on the boat is essential to keep you comfortable when the going gets rough. We spend 5 hours. Most people would say after 5, okay, we've had enough. We have a nice lunchbox on the boat with sandwiches, water, juice, and this and that. And then we go back to the lodge. Everybody goes and showers. And we then maybe do an excursion to the waterfalls. We have a lot of waterfalls in that area because of the seismic characteristics of that area. So you've got massive gorges, absolutely beautiful to go and see these gorges, visit the different waterfalls, maybe go on a horse ride or a trail walk in the forest and have one of the guides point out different plants. Or you may just want to, it's been a long day at sea, just have a rest. At 6 o'clock, we convene at the bar, chat about the day, how it's gone, have a few drinks, and then supper is normally at 7 o'clock. Have supper, and those that want to have a few more drinks can have a few more drinks, and those that want to retire can retire, normally.
And get ready to do it all again the next day.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of the dives themselves, obviously it depends on the group and their appetite, but more or less how many dives per day can you expect to do? And, what would be the average dive depth? Would it be something that somebody with an open water qualification can do? Would you rather have divers with an advanced qualification? What are those kinds of details?
Open water diver with a good number of dives under his belt is sufficient. You're diving to about 10 to 15 meters maximum. Most of our diving is at around 10 meters. The only proviso with the divers are they must want to see sharks. They must want to experience that side of the diving. Because a lot of people think they're going to come here and look at silverfish and maybe just dolphins. No, there's a lot of sharks involved as well. We don't want people panicking underwater because that obviously is not good for anybody. Everybody is a little bit on edge, a little bit scared. Anybody that tells me they're not scared when they jump in the water in those situations is either a liar or mad. I'm even scared when I jump in, and I've jumped in plenty of times. So fear is good, panic is bad. The level of diving is open water 1. It's very easy diving. All you got to do is be able to maintain your buoyancy at 10 meters, and that's the only skill you really need. When we're diving on the whales and dolphins, it's all mask and snorkel. So that's all on the surface, maybe diving down a few meters, and that's it. Some of the bait balls that are highly mobile, like when the predators are chasing suri or red eyes and they can't stabilize it in the bait ball, we jump in the water with mask and snorkel there as well because it's in and out and in and out. Some bait balls can last a minute. Some bait balls can last the whole day. So when the dive master goes in, he goes in first and he assesses what kind of bait ball it is. If it's a small bait ball, I would say the size, you can have bait balls the size of a house, and you can have bait balls the size of a wheelbarrow. When you've got the smaller bait balls, you don't want to throw everybody in the water at the same time because you impact on the predators. As soon as you stop the predators, then the sardines disappear. In that case, we would work on a rotation basis, maybe 3 people in for 15 minutes. And then those 3 people move back and the next 3 people go in and rotate like that. And we found a lot of success in doing that. On our boats, because we're spending so long out at sea, 5 hours plus, our boats can take 12 people, but we limit them to minimum 6, maximum 8. So everybody's got a lot of space, and it's not like a bunch of sardines on the boat as well.
And in terms of visibility, obviously there's a lot going on underwater. Does that affect the visit all, or is it generally quite easy to see what's going on?
That's a difficult one, and it depends if it's a wet year or dry year. If it's a dry year, then the rivers aren't running and the visibility is generally better. If it's been a wet year and there's a lot of rainfall and the rivers are flowing, then the visibility is impacted quite a bit inshore. So it varies from year to year, but in general, I would say the average visibility would be about 8 to 10 meters average, and can be very good, 15, 20 meters plus, and can be much worse, 1 to 2 meters visibility. We've had bait balls in water that's like zero visibility. And obviously, you can't get in the water in those conditions. You've got to just sit on the boat and watch it. And it's soul destroying sitting there watching the thing you can't get in. And we've had bait balls in 15 to 20 meter visibility where you're watching the whole show go down in like Caribbean conditions. It's like fantastic.
Wow, yeah. But that's obviously very much a luck of the draw, and it's something that you would actually assess when you're there on the day.
Absolutely. If it's not safe, then we won't go.
Okay. Well, we've spoken a little bit about the dive equipment, and you said, really just a 5mm wetsuit, and talked a little bit about the colors. In terms of photographic equipment, now I know you're going to have an underwater photographer there for the and beyond expeditions, but if anybody wants to get their own footage, is there any specific camera equipment that you'd recommend that they bring?
Look, the easiest camera to operate for the best results is a GoPro. The latest GoPros are phenomenal. They're small, they're compact. You can put them on a stick and have the camera away from you, because cameras attract sharks. I don't know what it is about the electronic signal that the camera gives off, especially the bigger cameras with strobes and things. When those things load, the signal it gives must be very close to the signal their food source gives off, because they're immediately attracted to it. If you can have a plain colored stick, not white, not silver, plain black on your GoPro, and your housings as well, if you can get away from silver. I know that a lot of these expensive housings are silver, but nothing you can do about that. So we've got a lot of photographers that come out here and use the Sardine Run to try and get their award-winning photographs. And every year, the photo that wins the photo of the year comes from the Sardine Run somewhere. So it's a great photographic opportunity. For the guy that just wants his own memories about the shoal and the whole thing, a GoPro is the way to go, I believe. It's nice, it's compact, it gives you a very good quality picture, very easy to handle, doesn't take up any space on the boat. And if it's on a stick, it's well away from you. So if a shark does bump it or bite it or whatever, it's like a meter away from you. It doesn't really matter, because that shark, when it bites it, it realizes straight away it's not food and lets it go. But you don't want to be holding it in your hand when you do that.
No, definitely not. I'm sure you also get your fair share of photographers who go down, and the first time they see the shoals, they get so excited that they actually either forget to or don't switch on their cameras properly or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had actually both scenarios where you've got a guy that has left the memory card off or he hasn't put the battery in, or left a cover in the front of the camera. And you get those that are so into their photography that they take a picture and then they look at the picture and they study this picture because they want to correct this or correct that and they miss the next 100 pictures. I've seen the picture of the year go past these guys while they're studying their camera. So it's really an exciting thing. Everybody gets excited. Some people jump in and sometimes they forget their weight belt. Sometimes they forget their fins. The cameraman forget the lens cap on. So it happens, but got plenty of opportunity to get back on the boat, sort it out and jump back in again.
And it is about being present in the moment and just experiencing it as well.
Absolutely. The best camera is your eye, and the memories that you get from that. But it's nice to have something on your hard drive as well.
In terms of special requests, things like nitrox or rebreather or any special diving specifications. Can you cater for those as well?
A rebreather would be very nice, but it would require everybody else to be on a rebreather. So if the whole group's on a rebreather, then that's fine. It's pointless having one guy on the rebreather and the rest on open circuit.
No, absolutely.
Because you're doing away with the advantages you've got from the rebreather. Nitrox, you're diving at 10 meters to 15 meters, so it's not really necessary. Also, the place we go to is extremely rural, Boyke River Lodge, and hard for those facilities to get there. So when you get when you weigh up the pros and cons, we've just gone with straight air and cylinders, and that's the easiest way to go.
Easiest and the most efficient.
Yeah.
Okay. Walter, just to end off with, do you have a favorite experience or a favorite moment that you've lived through on a sardine run that you want to talk about?
No, the one year we were down there in early June, and the guy that works with me, Timothy, he was the skipper that comes out with me and controls the boat while I'm diving, a Zulu gentleman. So came to me and said, have a look out there. And I looked out. My eyes aren't that good, but I could see there's a lot of birds and there's a massive bait ball happening there. And we had two German photographers that were doing a movie. I think the movie was called The Cape of Storms and involved the Sardine Run as well. So they were following the life cycle of a Cape gannet, and part of it is feeding on the sardines. The one guy decided, no, he wants just bird action from the air. So he went in the microlight. And the topside cameraman joined me on scuba. Well, we arrived out there, and the pilot says it's looking like a wagon wheel. There is predators, birds, whales, sharks, you name it, heading into this epicenter, just getting sucked in like a wagon wheel from everywhere, every direction. You just got this massive influx of predators. Well, I jumped in the water. We went down, and I thought, this is quite dark, and there's still sardines in front of me. I looked at my computer. We were at 20 meters, and we hadn't got to the bottom of the bait ball yet. So that's the size of the bait ball was absolutely massive. We did our dives and got the birds diving on because you wanted the birds, hitting the water and swimming and grabbing the sardines. They wanted that. We got all that. We went back in. We got another 2 cylinders, and we picked up the main photographer that was in the microlight and went back out. When we got back out, the sheer mass of predators, the sardines on the surface looked like they were in a frying pan. They were just shaking like, sharks, dolphins, birds. I think I could have run across 10 meters and been able to make it. And this cameraman, the underwater guy, picks up the land camera. So I said, what are you doing? He says to me in his German accent, Walter, we have the limit. Then we have the limit. But is this not beyond the limit? So that's an experienced cameraman saying that, look, it's not such a good idea getting in the water here.
I'm not going in.
And at that point, Peter Lamberti arrived there as well. And we dived another 2 hours on that bait ball. That was sharks the size, if you can imagine a shark with a girth of about a meter plus, and then another pectoral that's a meter long on that side and another meter long pectoral on this side coming past you. They're like aeroplanes, just pushing you out the way to get into the sardines. Like this ballet underwater was absolutely phenomenal. There were bottlenose dolphins, and the different way that the bottlenose dolphins were feeding on the sardines compared to the common dolphins. The common dolphins do a joint assault. They'll get together, and then they'll squeak, and they'll come through like 3 or 4 at a time and hammer the sardine. The bottlenose dolphin, he's sitting on the side of the bait ball like us, and he's watching the sardines going past. You see his head moving. And when an injured one comes by, he just grab, and they would feed and pose in front of us. Like the dolphin, like that S shape. They like got that S shape, and they're like looking at you, and right in front of you, posing for you all the time. It was like phenomenal. Everything that we wanted happened on that bait ball, and it went on from 7 o'clock in the morning until we said, okay, we can't anymore. And we went home at about 2 or 3 o'clock. And that was one of the best experiences I've ever had on the Sardine Run. I've had others where we've had bride's wells coming through from the other side of the bait wall. So they wouldn't come through from this side that we were on. They were coming through from the opposite side. And you never knew when this thing would come through. And next thing, this huge mouth comes past you. And I mean, I've seen like 9 lunge strikes coming through that particular bait ball. So there's so many experiences that I've had, seeing sailfish, marlin, sunfish, mola. No, the experiences have been many, but that bait ball was one that really has always stuck in my mind. It's my first very big one, and so full of action that it's like burned into my memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing. And if the Sardine Run hadn't already been on my bucket list, well, that description would have definitely got it there.
Fantastic.
Walter, thank you so much. It's been really interesting talking to you, and I'm sure it's given any of our listeners a really fantastic insight into this experience. I think all that remains is for me to wish you good shoals and calm seas over the next couple of weeks. And thank you again.
Yes, yeah, thanks so much. It was a pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you for listening to Leave Our World a Better Place. Don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to find out more about And Beyond, please log on to our website at andbeyond.com.